2 players out. 1 coming back. And somewhere in the medical wing of the Dodgers facility, Shohei Ohtani sitting with test results in his hands that told him something he wasn't ready to hear. The day arrived with the specific weight of days that carry multiple difficult truths simultaneously, the kind where the news doesn't pause between items to give you time to process one before the next one arrives. It just comes. All of it. In the compressed, overlapping way that consequential days have of refusing to organize themselves into the manageable sequence that makes hard things easier to absorb. The trade announcement came first. Then the DFA notifications. Then Roberts at a microphone saying something about two-way play that landed in the room with the quiet devastation of a sentence that everyone present understood immediately and that nobody wanted to be the first to fully acknowledge. And underneath all of it, threading through every development of that day like a current that gave everything else its charge, was the news that Ohtani had received privately. Before the cameras. Before the podium. Before the organizational machinery of a significant baseball announcement had assembled itself into its public form. The news had come to him first. And what it said had not been kind. The trade with the Mets had been built quietly. Not in the dramatic, accelerating way that blockbuster deals generate heat that radiates outward through the sport before they are official, the whispers that become rumors that become sourced reports that become the thing itself. This had been constructed in the spaces between the normal organizational communications. In conversations that happened at levels where discretion is maintained not because anything improper is occurring but because the people involved understand that the difference between a deal and a failed deal is often the silence that surrounds its construction. The Dodgers needed something specific. Not generally. Not in the broad sense of roster improvement that organizations always need across a long season. Specifically. In a way that the existing roster configuration could not address through internal development or minor adjustments at the margins. They needed an arm that could carry innings with the reliability that Ohtani's pitching absence had exposed as a structural gap, a gap that Kellner's arrival had partially addressed but had not fully closed because the volume of innings required exceeded what any single acquisition could responsibly cover. The Mets had what they needed. His name was Carlos Medina. The contract figures, released simultaneously with the trade announcement in a transparency that the Dodgers front office does not always extend to transaction communications, produced the immediate reaction that significant financial commitments produce when they become public in the context of an already expensive roster. The numbers were large. Large enough that the baseball media spent the first hour after the announcement primarily on the financial dimensions of the deal rather than on the baseball ones, on what the commitment said about the Dodgers' organizational priorities, on how the figures compared to comparable pitching acquisitions in recent seasons, on the specific arithmetic of a luxury tax situation that the trade had just made considerably more complicated. Roberts, when asked about the financial dimensions at his availability, said, "We don't make decisions based on tax math. We make decisions based on what we need to compete." What we needed was clear. What Medina provides was clear. The rest is accounting. The 2 DFA announcements arrived 12 minutes after the trade was confirmed. 2 names. Designated for assignment simultaneously. Which almost never happens, which, in the specific grammar of roster management, represents a significant organizational statement about the urgency of what is being built and the willingness to absorb the human cost of building it quickly. Both players had been contributors. Both had histories with the organization that deserved more than the transaction wire language that their departures received. Both were professionals who had shown up and done the work and competed honestly within a system that had now determined their slots were needed for something else. One of them had been in the facility that morning when the announcement came through internal channels before it was made public. He sat in the clubhouse for a long time before moving. Nobody rushed him. That is the specific, quiet decency that baseball organizations sometimes extend in these moments, the understanding that the machinery of roster management is impersonal but the people inside it are not, and that the least that can be offered is time. He took the time he needed. Then packed. Then left. The disappointing news reached Ohtani through the medical staff. The specifics of what the latest round of evaluation had shown, the precise picture of where the arm was in its recovery relative to where it needed to be before the demands of two-way play could be responsibly resumed, were communicated with the careful directness that the Dodgers medical team brings to difficult conversations with their most important player. They did not soften it. Ohtani had made clear, in the months since the initial hospitalization, that he wanted accurate information rather than managed information, that the version of a medical update designed to protect his emotional state was less useful to him than the version that told him exactly what was true. What was true was not what he had hoped. The timeline was longer than the optimistic projection that had been circulating internally. The nerve involvement that had complicated the initial diagnosis was resolving, but resolving more slowly than the earlier indicators had suggested it might. The structural picture was stable, the doctors were consistent on this point and Roberts would repeat it publicly, but stable did not mean ready. Not yet. Not for what two-way play actually requires from a left arm. Ohtani sat with this information for a long time. Roberts said it at the podium with the measured honesty of a manager who has learned that the baseball public respects directness more than it respects comfort. He said, "We are considering the possibility of delaying Shohei's return to two-way play. This is not a decision that has been finalized. It is a conversation that is ongoing between Shohei, the medical staff, and the organization. But I want to be transparent with you, the timeline we had originally discussed is under review. The medical picture requires us to review it." A reporter asked, "Is this delay weeks or months?" Roberts said, "We are not putting a number on it today. When we have a number we are confident in, we will share it." Another reporter asked, "How is Ohtani handling this?" Roberts was quiet for a moment. Then said, "The way he handles everything. With more composure than the situation requires and more focus on what he can control than most people would manage in his position." He paused. Then said, "He asked me, when we spoke about it, what the team needed from him right now. Not what the timeline was. Not when he would be back. What the team needed from him in the current moment. That is Shohei Ohtani. That question, right there, is who he is." Medina arrived that evening. He moved through the introductory procedures with the efficiency of a pitcher who has been traded before and understands that the fastest path to doing what you came to do is completing the formalities without lingering in them. He passed Ohtani in the corridor outside the medical wing. They had not met before. There had been no formal introduction arranged, the day had been too full of too many things for the organizational niceties of arranged meetings between new and existing players. Medina recognized him immediately. Stopped. Said, "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear today. About the timeline." Ohtani looked at him. Then said, "No. It wasn't." Medina said, "Then we carry it until you're back." Simple. Direct. Without the performance of solidarity that the moment might have invited from someone more oriented toward how things appear rather than what they mean. Ohtani looked at him for a moment. Then nodded. Then walked back toward the training room, where the work that remained available to him was waiting. As it always was. As it always is.